you could only go so far with a commercial RMM. You could script for it, absolutely, but you couldn't troubleshoot problems when they happened with the agents themselves. Everything was cloud hosted by a third party, and we had no visibility into the security behind that. So we had very little control. We had a DevOps guy join us for a couple of years, and he was open source insane. This guy lives, eats and breathes open source. Convinced me to try Tactical, and we literally never looked back. It did everything that our previous solution did, but we still retained control of the entire end-to-end process. Is it cheaper? Yeah, absolutely. Was that the reason for moving? No, it definitely wasn't. It genuinely wasn't about the money. It was about...
Colm Whelan, nice to meet you, and I'm super excited to have you as our first guest in this podcast. So a little bit more about yourself. You're the founder of Rockfield IT Services. This year you're going to celebrate 30 years of being in the IT space. And yeah, if maybe you could share some more about yourself, that's going to be great.
Okay, sure. Actually, by the way, really nice job on pronouncing my name. Nobody ever gets it right. It's Irish, and I usually say it's like Gollum in Lord of the Rings, but slightly less evil. The first time I laid hands on a computer was 1981. Just started in secondary school, and there were Apple IIes. I had got such a fright, I haven't touched an Apple since. It's been PCs all the way and Linux. I was originally a psych nurse after school. I worked in psychiatric hospitals, people with mental illnesses. And because I had an IT hobby in the mid-90s, and people knew about it, if there were computer problems around the hospital, I was often asked to help out. I got involved in IT at that stage, ended up doing some courses, postgrad, that kind of stuff. I founded a small business in 1996 doing computer sales and repairs to small businesses. I was, I think, about 26 or 7 at that stage. That was the first time I started doing IT for money. So that's 30 years ago at this point. I founded what we would now call an actual MSP in 2004, which is 22 years ago now. That's Rockfield IT Services. I was previously working under a different name, but I've always worked for myself, except for some stints on contract in larger companies. I suppose, I've had everything in the line of clients. We have customers who are 1 or 2 users who are very, very happy to pay for good services. And I've operated under contract in Rockfield as the head of IT to a multi-billion euro company at the same time as doing that.
Are your users concentrated in a certain geographical area or region?
All of our users are in Ireland in the east. So we're located in a small town. At the moment, I'm up in the mountains on holiday in a mobile home, but all of our office is located in a small provincial town called Carlow. We're about 80 kilometres, 90 kilometres into central Dublin. It's a lovely place to do business, lots of small businesses around, and most of our clients are indeed quite small businesses.
So you're like the town IT guy.
Well, look, it's a big enough town that we've got 5 or 6 IT companies.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a university there, and it's a technical university, so it spins off a lot of startups, which is great because we're seldom short of people to hire, new grads and stuff like that. So we're not that big, 5 staff in total, and our largest client at the moment has about maybe 5 IT using staff, and they'd have other retail staff and stuff like that. And then our smallest will be 2 users, really 2 users. And I suppose the market has changed a lot in the last, say, 10 years. And we made a decision a number of years ago, about 5 years ago, to go all in on the Microsoft ecosystem, simply because that's what our clients were doing, and we needed to be there in order to support them. So we push our clients pretty hard onto Microsoft 365 Business Premium, try to lock everything inside of the controls that provides, which are pretty comprehensive. But there is still a significant cohort of potential clients that we can't serve in that way, and they need something else. And that's what drew me to your project, because when I saw the various tools, the various open source tools that you were going to bring in, you were replicating a lot of the functionality that small businesses love about 365 without the vendor lock-in. And that's an incredibly interesting thing to do. Nobody's done it before. There hasn't been even an attempt to comprehensively compete with those kind of, what would you call them, with those kind of facilities and with those kind of services. And yeah, it kind of knocked my socks off as soon as I saw it. We were already using Tactical RMM ourselves. In-house, we've about 200 endpoints on that, 250 endpoints on Tactical. And we find it fantastic. Really, really simple to use, monitor, maintain, and script for. And it's incredibly reliable as well. You know, we have it, we self-host, obviously pay for the basic support with the guys, and it's been nothing short. I think I've needed support like twice in 4 years. It's been fantastic.
And what drove you to even know about Tactical RMM?
I've always been interested in open source. I first installed Linux SUSE in, I think, about 1999. And so I've been back and forth between Windows and Linux, specifically Linux, a little tiny bit of FreeBSD. Never did much with Macs at all. Macs don't have much market penetration in Ireland. So as a result, many of us aren't really exposed to the whole Mac and Apple ecosystem. But the phones are incredibly popular, but the PCs not so much, and the OS not so much. So I've been back and forth with Linux and Windows since about 2000 or thereabouts. And it's been a very, very interesting journey for me. So we run a lot of Linux servers ourselves, and we self-host a lot of services. And we would default to Linux for almost everything at the infrastructure side. Even, nowadays we don't supply, where we have clients who need Windows servers for whatever reason, run the occasional app or something like that. We host VMs on Proxmox for them, rather than going the whole Windows server route, because it just, nobody needs, I'm probably overstating the point, but Active Directory isn't required any longer. And we've tried to move all of our clients to Azure Active Directory or Entra. And it's catching up very quickly, particularly with conditional access and Intune. So that allows us to manage small business clients in the way that we would have managed them back in the 2000s when we had SBS, Small Business Server, with its own built-in exchange and all that kind of stuff. That was a good time to be an MSP or an IT service company. You made good money on projects and you made good money on maintenance. And it was pretty reliable if you did it right. And it was far ahead of what everybody else was doing in the space. So, yeah. So,
and was there any specific moment in the contracts of your clients or something like this that gave you the opportunity to go in and kind of like integrate something like Tactical RMM?
Well, yeah, sure. So we had used many commercial, when I say commercial, for-profit RMMs, because Tactical, as it is, it's a commercial enterprise. They just do their commerciality differently. We had used many of them. We'd used Pulseway, we had used Kaseya, we'd used Datto, we'd used something else as well. But we were never entirely happy because you could only go so far with a commercial RMM. You could script for it, absolutely, but you couldn't troubleshoot problems when they happened with the agents themselves. You couldn't troubleshoot problems with the servers. Everything was cloud hosted by a third party, and we had no visibility into the security behind that. And ConnectWise was the first one. We had very little control. We had a DevOps guy join us for a couple of years, and he was open source insane. This guy lives, eats and breathes open source. And he convinced me to try Tactical, and we literally never looked back. I mean, it did everything that our previous solution did, but we still retained control of the entire end-to-end process. So it ended up being a no-brainer. Is it cheaper? Yeah, absolutely. Was that the reason for moving? No, it definitely wasn't. It genuinely wasn't about the money. It was about control, it was about visibility, and it was about the ability to secure things yourself and to document that security and be able to attest to that security to our client.
That's pretty interesting. I don't commonly speak to MSPs that have DevOps functions internally.
We don't anymore, unfortunately. That guy he was an anomaly.
Interesting.
But I would say that if we could get, so we're on a very interesting growth curve at the moment, and we're adding new clients monthly, and we've upped our game in terms of both sales and service. I'm hoping that we would be able to rehire somebody in DevOps maybe next year. I really miss having a DevOps guy. I really do. Now, I will say that things like Cloud Code have softened that blow quite a bit. I just used Cloud Code today to install YTDLP on a Linux server, download a bunch of videos that I had already paid for, transcribe them using Whisper, and turn the entire thing into an SOP with about 6 commands. And previously I would have been completely unable to do that. Like installing Whisper would have been an issue, etc., etc. So there was loads of bits to it. But Claude, and I won't focus solely on Claude. Like Claude is fantastic, but it isn't the only car in the race. Settled on Claude for the moment and absolutely love it. But I'm under no illusions that might change next month. But it really has reduced the need for a dedicated DevOps guy at least for relatively simple functionality. If we were to get into serious integration work or serious automation work, we would definitely need somebody, I think. But again, that may be addressed by AI a little further down the road.
Are you also it sounds like you're pretty ahead of the curve when it comes to AI adoption and the things you play with internally. Do you also offer it for your users?
So we have just contacted all of our clients and said we are using these tools in-house. We've literally listed some commercial tools, some open source tools. We're using them in-house. And we've made it quite clear in our messaging that there are no experts in AI at the moment. There just aren't any. We're all working it out as we go along. But the principles in business haven't changed. The principles are still to decrease costs, efficiency, improve the user experience, improve the customer experience. So, as I say, it's just another tool, absolutely amazing tool, but just another tool on that journey. So I don't think we're going to set the world on fire as small business like ourselves. But again, our clients are aware of AI, they're using it a bit, and at least some of them are very concerned about the security implications. Very, very concerned about the security implications. We have a couple of clients that are in industries we have one that has national security implications. We have others that are in finance and medicine and that kind of thing. And, they have quite heavy regulatory burdens. So, we're trying to help those people be careful. That's all. And I don't think it's rocket science either. I really don't. Like the same principles apply. What's the data? What has access to it? Who has access to it? Where is it? And how do we protect it from being disseminated, disorganized?
Yeah, no, it's pretty cool because I think that if you specifically talk about AI tools and concerns people have about where the data is hosted, what are the security practices around this data and how the data has been transmitted, etc. I think that actually there you have a bunch of open source opportunities, right? Rather than you can still feel, yeah.
Absolutely. 100%.
It's like we talked about open source, self-hosting open source stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I haven't started that yet. And I haven't started it because the learning curve right now versus using commercial tools is too steep for me. That's really what it boils down to. So as I say, we're on a growth trajectory. So a huge amount of my time is tied up in just running the business and in developing more efficient systems that free up my time. But every time I free up, 5 hours a week, there's some new demand that comes on to take it. Because I suppose I operate really as a kind of I operate obviously as the business owner, as the CEO, and I try to do all of that stuff. But also, I'll be the final port of call on technical stuff. I'll be the final port of call on financial stuff and commercial stuff and deals and customer service. If somebody else gets to a point where they can't solve a problem, they come to me. And we've about 160 companies on our books, of which about 80 are managed to either fully managed or managed enough that they require a good bit of our time. The rest are kind of break fix or project only. So, enough problems crop up that a lot of my time is taken. Anyhow, that takes us away from it. I do absolutely see an opportunity in self-hosting open source AI models, retaining data control in-house, either for ourselves or for our clients. And again, being able to attest to that, particularly in regulation heavy environments. If you were to ask me to go do it now, I'd look to identify a model and a framework that would give us as close. Well, I suppose it depends on the use case. Like, the use case is going to be first and foremost. Right now, the use cases in small business are document creation and polishing systems and creating slideshows and basic graphic stuff. But I think people are missing the boat. Like, as I said, I just did something today that, had I done it manually, it took probably 15 minutes of my time. Had I done it manually, it probably would have taken me 2 days. That's not
insane, yeah.
Yeah, that's a joke. And that, the output from that, furthermore, will save 2 of my staff probably another 5 hours each a week. So, the $20 a month for Claude and maybe the occasional $20 top up, because it needs to run off and use a third-party tool, is an absolute no-brainer. And right now, it's very, very cost-effective. I don't know how long that's going to stay that way, because all of these guys are spending money like it's water, and I don't see how they can continue at the rate that they are spending and building data centers and like there's talk about what's going to happen with the different kind of GPUs and CPUs that everybody's using. Like, people are saying that the training, the hardware that's used for training models is not the hardware you want to use for running inference models afterwards. So, there's going to be a big change up, I suspect, over the next couple of years as everybody tries to fully commercialize. And yeah, it'll be interesting. And I think at that point, it will get very, very interesting with open source models, the ability to host in-house.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think that self-host, like if you don't pre-train, then self-hosting a model can be extremely, extremely, extremely cost-effective for everyone, right?
And you might need 2 models. I can see a situation where maybe you need 2 models, or at least what we're terming skills now within those models, where you use, your first protocol is the organization of your data. Because, most companies are where the money is going to be for most companies is in taking the knowledge that they already have in-house and making that knowledge available in a very easy to reference format and an easy to integrate format. Every organization, no matter how small, has huge amounts of in-house knowledge built up over time that no one person or no one team knows how to access and knows where it is. It's lost all the time when people leave and retire and et cetera, et cetera. And I think AI models, and particularly, I suppose, what we were calling retrieval augmented generation up until a few months ago, that has the capacity to transform how businesses use knowledge.
Yeah, you also, when you talked about the fact that your users are kind of looking for ways to create documentation and maybe visualize documentation better, like maybe we're going to skip it because you don't need to format documentation or to create nice slides because it's just going to be consumed by another AI agent, right? So
100%.
Yeah.
100%. Absolutely. The only time where you need to visualize it when you need to present it to humans. I think we just onboarded a new client, a real estate agent with about 12 or 15 users. And the guy that we were dealing with in the sales process just couldn't visualize what we were saying in the proposal. And I literally upped the proposal into Claude and I said, can you provide me a graphic that will explain this proposal in a very easy to understand way to a non-technical decision maker in a real estate agent? It took about 6 minutes to produce a HTML file that I stuck up on our self-hosted on a private URL. I sent him the URL and he signed the proposal the next day.
Yeah, pretty insane.
And like, that's not no skill on my part.
Yeah. You'd think that down the road MSPs will be transformed into also providing AI consultation and AI services rather than just IT?
We are the only people correctly positioned to do it, in my opinion. We've seen a few of the rogue bros so far, guys who are fantastic on AI and haven't a clue about process or security or regulation or compliance or any of the stuff that any business above 3 or 4 users cares about. They can do some very, very interesting stuff. And it's fantastic. They're all in their school communities learning from each other and everybody's having fun and it's great. And some of those guys in 10 years time are going to be absolute goddamn gurus. And it'll be guys like us, hopefully, that are hiring them. So, but is that, I think, yes. So an MSP is in general, we're generalists. We're the GPs of IT and the general practitioners of IT. And you call to us when small businesses in particular call on us for absolutely everything that has a power switch. PC, they want to know about it. Cameras, they want to know about it. Recording equipment, they want to know about it. Audio equipment. Do you know anything about that, guys? Well, yeah, we know a little bit. There isn't a thing with a switch that we don't know something about or that we don't have a relationship with somebody who knows something about it. And, access control, yeah. Security, yeah. What's the oddest thing we do? Meshtastic networks for emergency contactability. That's radio. But I came to that through working in TowerCos, people who hold all the telecoms towers. I worked for them as an MSP or as an IT provider. So, there isn't much that you can't turn your hand to. And so this is a very long way of saying, that yes, I agree with your premise that it is very likely that MSPs will become at least the initial go-to AI consultant. We may not be the specialist in every AI area, but we should be the first port of call because we'll have a holistic view of business systems, of which AI just be one facet.
Yeah, I think it also kind of it also kind of take me back to the discussion about tactical and mesh central, right? Because if you can reduce your RMM cost by adopting AI, and that means that either the price that your users are going to pay or the margins that you're going to make are going to be better for both sides.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be the case also for Claude, right? Because as you said it correctly, right now the actual cost of the 20 or 200 max plan that you're paying for Claude is not the realistic price, right? It's all VC subsidizing. Yeah. So
absolutely not. I couldn't agree more. To our business, if we were all using Claude to the max, we would probably need an intense initial period of where it was probably costing us something like 2 or 3 or 4 grand a month. And then we would have an ongoing kind of maintenance ever after for a couple of $100 a month in a very small business. I think we're off by an order of magnitude in pricing at the moment. I really do. That worries me because I was around for the .com bubble and I lost some money in it. I also made some money at the back end. It was a scary time. It was a scary, scary time. And this reminds me of it so much. It really, really does. I do think that while there may be aspects to this bubble that are unrealistic, the underlying, what would we call it? The underlying promise of AI far exceeds anything we've seen before. It has not an AI maximalist. Don't get me wrong. I'm also not a grey goo guy. I'm also not, AI is going to end this guy. I think if AI ends us, it will end us by taking away our jobs and not giving us a reason to continue with our lives. That's the psych nurse coming back into me and the need for meaning and all that kind of stuff. I genuinely do think that people need adversity in order to thrive. And AI and robotics could end up taking away all of the adversity. And I think that might be the end for us. And that would worry me far more than, the paperclip monster.
Yeah. I agreed. Yeah, I agreed. I think there's going to be, I think the implications of this new technology that we're seeing is going to be far more than software engineers and IT people getting excited about a prompt that is
100%
that is doing stuff for them. Yeah. Let's kind of move on to the next topic. So so obviously you guys kind of more unique on the side that you guys had your own DevOps person. Did you experiment with more open source tools to take on different tool set of the MSP stack?
Yeah, a little bit. So at the moment in-house, we're running SIP. So if you're aware of it, the improved partner portal. It's a fantastic project and entirely open source, run by a dev team. We self-host it on our own Azure account. It's a fantastic product. We're using Tactical. We're using Mesh Central. We originally were using Mesh Central only through Tactical, but we decided to set up our own server as well separately for those clients that aren't fully managed, so we can provide support easily for them. And we use Netboard for secure connection to our own head office and to our client sites. If you're aware of Netboard, another fantastic product. We're using Linux servers for hosting many of our own services. We use Proxmox with our clients, and we use Backup for backing up Windows servers. And it's just and again, another fantastic tool. Came across it a couple of years ago, and we've never ever looked back. It's just fantastic.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. The order of what you just said is kind of similar to what we envision on the longer term of what we want to add. For example, you mentioned Proxmox, so we analyze it specifically, by the way, for backup. Not for backup. And we keep on, I think that I was always an open source kind of enthusiast. So the amount of open source tools that you see that are coming out these days, mostly because of vibe coding and all the things you said, it's just crazy amount of good quality open source. So I just saw a new RMM tool called Breeze RMM, just came out with an MSP building it. An MSP just like yourself, sitting down with, so I think it's pretty exciting times in
Very
terms
exciting
of
times. And your project has opened my eyes quite a bit. Like, for instance, I had never heard of Fleet. I had never heard of Fleet. I did not know that there was an open source mobile device management tool available. Like, I was aware of the commercial tools, and for Windows users, Intune is really, really, really good. I can't give Microsoft too much grief about it, but Fleet is incredibly interesting. I've been playing around with it just a little, and it's, again, the learning curve is always a pain. And that's why having had a DevOps guy in-house who could soften that blow a little bit was incredibly useful, and we don't have him right now. But again, we can fall back on whatever your favorite model is and ask it literally to write you a dummy's guide to Fleet DM. And it'll do it, and it'll do a damn good job on the first. Yeah, one of the interesting things over the last few weeks has been few constraints are now required in order to get good results out of a good model. Adding too many constraints now seems to make things worse. It's quite interesting. You need to give the model its head to some degree and let it do some stuff. One of the most useful things is providing examples of what good is, and then even as many constraints out as you can after that. It's been an interesting time. Anyhow, you're right. You're like, we use Huntress for SOC. There's a fantastic open source, and just the name of it escapes me. You'll know it. I know you'll know it. There's a fantastic open source project that combines, the guy in question has built a stack. He's got a really big YouTube channel. He's built a stack around one of the log management tools. And what is that big, give me a sec.
I think you talk about,
Yes.
Yeah, Sigma. Yeah, Sigma rules. Yeah.
And it was just So we tried it in-house, but the overhead was high when we were still entirely, and we are currently still entirely, a Windows business. I can actually see 6, 8, 10 years time an entirely, or I can see a viable, entirely open source MSP with entirely open source businesses as clients. I can see that, and I can see it quite clearly, that the rate at which open source software is maturing, and somebody somewhere a few years ago finally cottoned on to the fact that the user experience is absolutely essential in software development. Like for a long time, you know this, everybody in Linux was the prototypical Arch Linux user. I use Linux because I like pain. And anybody who couldn't make heads nor tail of the often conflicting man pages was an idiot and a noob and didn't deserve any help in any of the online communities. That's just how it was for a long time. It's not like that anymore. Just isn't. There are a few places it's like that, but mostly it's not. And I think the move away from the Richard Stallman mindset towards the mixed FOSS with commercial mindset has helped that enormously. Like FOSS are fantastic, utterly fantastic. But how the hell do you make a living?
You do have, like, for example, Fleet and us kind of took the same approach where they provide it as a self-host and have,
I think the mixed model is the way forward, and that's what will drive more commercial adoption, and that's what will allow FOSS and FOSS companies to grow. And that's what will allow like, when you think about it, we've got 80 companies using free software.
Quite amazing.
We didn't do anything special. Just a really, really decent developer developed a really, really decent tool with an eye on a particular market and is making a good living with a team now in doing so, and good for him. The day of the hobbyist the hobbyist thing is fantastic. It's great. But, if you want to use it in business, here we are. And we don't want to be red hat.
Exactly. Yeah, I think it's just layers of better management and deployment. For example, you mentioned FleetDM. FleetDM is like a layer on top of another open source tool called OS Query.
Oh, yeah.
You know OS Query because most IT admins know OS Query. FleetDM took OS Query and built a management layer on top of it that can be highly scalable. Yeah, and we came and we built another management layer on top of both of them with other tools. So I think like what we're seeing now is just more layers of management that makes it easier to consume open source tools. And FleetDM has been in the market for 5-6 years. Tactical, you probably know better than me, at least 7 years.
Yeah.
So those projects are pretty stable.
4 years we've been using Tactical now.
And probably even before you guys used it, it was out there, right? So
yes, it was.
It's been in market.
So commercially for MSPs, right, if they want to go the open source route, they're going to have to be able to offer a product or service that compares well to Microsoft. They don't need to compare well, like, excuse my French now, but Google Apps is a shit show. From a security and a management perspective, it's awful. But I honestly, I don't love Microsoft. In fact, I detest Microsoft. I make very little money from Microsoft themselves. We make decent money managing the products, but I don't like them as a company, and they don't like us. It's clear that they don't like their partners. But at the same, and if there were a viable alternative out there for the tools that we find invaluable for small businesses inside of the 365, what they call the modern workplace stack. So specifically MDM, EDR, conditional access, and conditional access, I know they call it conditional access, but it's, security policies, and those tools, and DLP, data loss prevention, that kind of stuff. Like, every small business that's bigger than 4 or 5 or maybe 6 clients or 6 users needs that stuff. They really genuinely do in the modern business ecosystem, simply because the external threats to their data and to their operations I don't think a lot of small businesses just don't realize how bad it is. They really don't. Like, we had a client today who isn't a managed client, thank God, who one of their staff decided to bring in a personal laptop, which was infected with some malware, plugged it into for some reason, I don't know, we've yet to find out what the rationale was, into their unmanaged network. It connected to a very important website in the UK need to deal with for their business, and commenced a DDoS. And this is a small company, like maybe 6 or 7 people in the office. I don't want to say any more than that because they'd be identifiable. But, these people, this particular company, have fought us for 2 years on going fully managed. Needless to say, they're reconsidering that this evening. It was just... they just don't realize. I think, do you remember, you're probably not old enough to remember when people used to say that it was Norton that created all of the viruses so they could sell antivirus. And I think small businesses see that with, some small businesses see that with the MSP as well. The MSP is exaggerating the risk to sell seats.
Yeah.
And that isn't true. Well, maybe some are. We're not.
Yeah. No, I agree. So we're at the top of the hour,
Okay.
and I don't want to. And you're on a vacation, so I don't want to take.
Oh, that's no bother.
Okay. I would like to finish and to get like your maybe 1 or 2 tips for MSPs that thinking about going open source, what to do and what not to do.
Okay, what to do? Going open source has to make sense commercially for you. It has to make sense operationally for you. And it has to make sense operationally for your clients. So as I was saying earlier, the principle of open source is fantastic, but you've got to look at the bigger picture, which is this going to save me? So identify tools that can potentially replace what we're going to do, evaluate them very, very carefully against your existing commercial tools. And if they make sense, so you've got to take functionality, security, cost, and operational impact into consideration. And if you do those things, you should adopt them, in my opinion, assuming that they're a relatively mature tool. At the moment, so many new tools are popping up. There's a huge crop of them, and in 6 months' time, half of them won't exist. So be careful of that. Tactical RMM in and of itself is a fantastic tool. Mesh Central is a fantastic tool. Network is a fantastic tool. If you want to go zero trust, Network is your friend, 100%. Proxmox, learning curve isn't that high for hosting in-house VMs. Can't fault it. And it can be its own backup server. And if you have a large enough campus, you can achieve offsite backup quite easily, which a lot of our clients do by using point-to-point wireless links. So there's just so many opportunities. But those particular tools right now, what I find interesting about you guys is your integration. Like the AI stuff is really interesting, but the skin and the management layer that you're putting on top of all of these disparate tools and making them one, that's where it's really, really, really interesting. And I cannot wait to see your PSA there, because PSA for us it's a really, really big deal. Like it's a force multiplier in terms of management documentation, all that kind of stuff. So we use Hoodoo and we use Halo PSA, and between them, they cost us a significant chunk of money every month, which is fine. I have no issue with that. Again, I can't do all of the things that I want to do with it, and it's open source, you can.
It's fascinating discussion, and Colm, I want to thank you for taking the time up in the mountains and spending 1 hour with us and talking about open source. I enjoyed it a lot, and hopefully we're going to see you. I think we already talked on the Slack community on Open MSP, so we keep on doing that. And thanks again, and yeah, we'll be in touch. Thank you so much.
Thank you all very, very much, and have a lovely evening.